Good morning. I feel like our panel was the baton was passed to us now. There was a lot of conversation about what local leaders can do and a pushes for us to reach out to our local leaders. And they asked and we delivered. We have two exciting local leaders here with us this morning to ground the conversation a little bit more to the local level. And we look forward to an interesting conversation really focused on solutions right now that we could get to as part of our discussion. I'm Shena Ashley. I'm proud to represent Capital One. I serve as Vice President of the Capital One Impact and Investing team, which is responsible for delivering on the philanthropic commitments of the company, and also Capital One's Insight Center, which delivers real-time data and insights to inform policymakers. And as part of that agenda, we have been partnering with the Bipartisan Policy Center and the U.S. Conference of Mayors to retrieve a survey to understand how mayors are operating at the local level and bringing new solutions to address this crisis. I think we were informed earlier, everyone understands there's a crisis, there's a little bit more of a shared perspective on that, but we don't have the same shared sense of what the key solutions are that will drive that. Capital One is proud to be part of this conversation and continuing to be a driver of those solutions, both as a major employer in this region. It impacts us. It is something that we have to solve to continue to attract the best talent to our company, but also as a part of our legacy as one of the largest community development funders in this country. We have been a big part of financing the build and preservation of affordable housing all across this country, and proud to be part of that solution. So let me introduce our mayors who are joining us for an exciting conversation. I do not think they need much of an introduction. We were already introduced to our Mayor of Richmond here, Mayor Avula, in your first year, right? You have already made housing a priority, and we've already heard about the millions you have brought to bear. So we look forward to hearing more about that. And here is Mayor Ross from Arlington, Texas. I will tell you all, in the green room, there was a threat that shoes might fly. I don't think that that might happen, but I think he will bring some energy to this conversation. So let's get started, Mayor. It's just a little bit of a grounding, if we'll start with you, Mayor Avula, just to give us a sense of what the housing landscape has been like in your region, what some of the challenges are, just so that we can orient ourselves into the place. Capital One understands Richmond very deeply. It is the birthplace of Capital One. And if it's a place that could birth Capital One, it can birth the best solutions to affordable housing in this country.
Thanks so much, and great to be here with you all this morning. Richmond, just about an hour 45 south of here. And, you know, we have had a pretty tremendous growth arc over the last 5 to 7 years, which has been great for our city, for our region. It has been really challenging for housing. And as you heard, and as you all know, I mean, when cities are not keeping up with demand, that's when you really, stress the cost of housing, and that has happened in droves in Richmond. Just last week, Zillow named us top 5 hottest real estate markets in the country. And I think in part that is because Richmond is an amazing city. I hope you all come and visit at some point. But also in part because relative to places like DC and New York, we are way more affordable. There's no traffic. There's an incredible river. There's just the culture of our city is a real draw without a lot of the challenges of larger cities. Now, what that means is that over the last decade, as we have consistently seen population growth, we have also seen, as much of the country has seen, increase in average rental rates, increase of cost of housing, and we've not done a great job of keeping up with supply. And so coming in, I'm a baby mayor, 5.5 months on the job, but the clear mandate coming, after last year of campaigning was housing affordability. How do we encourage the growth and development of our city, but make sure that we are protecting long-term residents and keeping folks who have been there and who have been so much a part of building our city and building its culture front and center as the city grows.
That's a really important point, and we'll come back to that a little bit to really understand how you can protect residents against displacement in order for them to benefit from the boom that is happening as people are leaving places like Petworth here in DC and heading down to Richmond. Hopefully we'll find our ways to keep some of that talent here in the market, but happy to share them down with Richmond. All the way down in Texas, can you tell us a little bit more about the booming metro area that is Arlington?
Well, it's batshit crazy.
I told you.
Can I say that out loud?
We're all adults.
I'm going to get it out of the way because I have been told I'm the weirdest mayor in the United States. I think that's probably the truth. I grew up in Detroit. How I ended up in Texas, God only knows. But I'm a Marine. I was a cop. I spent 7 years undercover buying drugs for a living. There's not a whole lot of mayors that can say that. I'm a trial lawyer, a restaurateur, and then I got bored. I guess I became mayor about 4 years ago. Arlington is a strange place because population and land-wise, Arlington is bigger than Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, St. Louis, New Orleans, about the same size as Tampa. We're over 400,000 in population with nearly 100 square miles. But we started as a small little suburb bedroom community in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So we're a big city stuck between two bigger cities. And historically, Arlington really got its start back in the 50s and 60s when Six Flags Over Texas came and the General Motors assembly plant came to Arlington. So if anybody owns a Tahoe or an Escalade or a Suburban, it's manufactured in Arlington, Texas. And when those places came to Arlington, we had a lot of moderate income, blue-collar family housing. Through the 70s and 80s, tremendous multifamily projects were done in Arlington, and now here we are in 2025. The dynamics of Arlington have changed where we have a tremendous growth in biotech industry and high-tech stuff and a need for executive homes as well. So I would argue, first of all, that housing isn't a priority around the country. It is the priority around the country. Every single city in the United States is plagued with not only how to get affordable housing, but how to make housing itself affordable at all levels. The good news is, and it doesn't look like it most days nowadays, government still works. It works mostly at a local level. And crazy isn't sustainable. It's just not. So be patient. Our democracy is set up so that it's like a great big filter that shakes out the craziness, and it's still going to work. I'm a believer in what we have here in the United States. So yeah, I forget what the damn question was. Now I'm just babbling. Anybody else remember the damn question?
You were helping us understand Arlington, and I feel like I'm there. I was on a ride in Six Flags. I think I got all.
It's all covered.
Drug
If you don't know,
purchases,
for all you Commanders fans over here,
Oh, you don't want to start.
we house the Cowboys. Okay, so all the big sport. Did I hear a damn boo?
I can't take sides. Capital One has a large presence in Plano, Texas, and so we will celebrate all sides of the different things here. This is the bipartisan policy. Like, you're already declaring sides here.
I know, but
All
it's
right.
football. It's not the same.
On housing. I know in this region we can talk about the connection between football and housing because we have a stadium debate and all the housing to go with that. So you are right on theme, actually, Mayor Ross, for this region. But Mayor Avula, let's get back to this displacement topic there. What are some of the strategies? And so we've been, you grounded us in this sense that there is hope, there is optimism that we can have when that we are seeing things starting to, people being attracted to the assets and the richness of our communities. There are ways we can harness that, but also protect the people who have been there from the beginning, who didn't get to enjoy the liveliness of the city in all its aspects. How are you thinking about particular things on the ground now, different solutions that may help do both of those and strike that right balance?
We have come to this work at the beginning of this administration, just really focused on how do we increase production and prevent displacement, right? Those are the two lenses that we bring to everything that we're building around housing in our community. On the prevent displacement side, there's the people side of it. And so the budget that we just passed has a significant amount of money that is supporting legal protection or legal representation, eviction prevention programs that are run by some community partners. And I think that the other part of this is, as we, public housing redevelopment is a big part of this strategy. Thankfully, HUD is really clear about one-to-one replacement, although that's understood differently by different communities. And so we don't have direct authority over our public housing, Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, but early on in this administration, we've really come into them in lockstep. We've done a lot of work to engage public housing residents and really try to give them a sense that as we move forward with public housing development, we will absolutely prioritize one-to-one replacement into mixed income communities. So over the last few years, one of our large 6 public housing communities has started this process where across the street from Creighton Court, there's a 300 to 400 unit neighborhood. That's a third public housing voucher, a third subsidized senior, and a third market rate. And so we use that as kind of our first test case of let's move residents from Creighton Court across the street into this new community and make sure that anybody, and give them a choice. And so we used housing choice vouchers in that. They went to communities around the region. And it was not done perfectly, right? I mean, there were a lot of missteps in that process, but we learned from that. And we know that because we have over 10,000 units of public housing in the city alone, and we know that public housing redevelopment is going to be a big priority for us, that we've got to do a better job of connecting with residents, giving them voice, and showing them proof of how there will be one-to-one replacement, even as we come up with mixed income strategies.
I love that, really proving to people that it's possible. And I hear in that example, too, when we move people to opportunity, you're not taking them so far out of their networks and the things that they've relied on to keep their lives. You're moving them across the street, and there's still new access, but they still have some connectivity to things that were in the past. Mayor Ross, what are you doing in your area to make sure that those middle-class households that have been there for a long time get to stay as you're now building executive housing and, a little bit more higher income housing?
Yeah, it's tough. It forces local government to really try to get creative on how we're approaching things. One of our biggest obstacles right now is the uncertainty with what lies with the federal government. The only thing certain about where we're going is there's more uncertainty around the corner. And if you look at the big, beautiful plan, it looks to eliminate the CDBG, looks to eliminate home. You're talking about cuts in LIHTC. You're talking about significant issues that will dramatically affect low income to moderate income housing opportunities for people. It's not just the cuts in the plan, though. It's everything else that you see going on in the government that we have to deal with at a local level. For instance, we heard during the last panel that the tariffs play a significant role in the increase of housing materials here in the United States. We get a lot of our wood from Canada, and it plays a tremendous role in increasing the cost. But the immigration issues play a role in Texas, particularly because 40 to 50% of our workforce in construction are immigrants in Texas.
40 to 50%?
40 to 50% are immigrants from, and what we're seeing now is half of that workforce not showing up for work for fear that they're going to get arrested or detained or deported. Well, when half of that workforce doesn't show up for work, you delay the project. When you delay the project, you increase the cost. When you increase the cost, the end user pays the price. And it's a ripple effect that we're seeing all across the board on that. Couple that with currently the anti-DEI movement that we see going on, not just federally, but throughout states as well. Texas is one of those states. And how does that impact you? Well, a lot of the grants that we are getting to help with some of these issues are grants that we have done for inclusivity reasons, for equity reasons. And nowadays, we've already lost grants because it's included the word inclusive. Now, that is sad. When did inclusivity and equality become bad words? I know bad words. Y'all have already heard. Those are not bad words. So we get it on all fronts, whether it's anti-DEI, whether it's immigration, whether it's the tariffs. But then things weren't perfect in the first place because interest rates are high, the cost of labor is high, the cost of products is high. Developers are still having issues with that. And in Arlington, one of the biggest issues we deal with, because we're virtually built out, a lot of our development has to come with redevelopment. Well, that is very costly. To ask a developer, you got to come in, buy the project, displace individuals, tear it down, build another project. It adds tremendous cost to that. So we started getting a little bit creative with things such as we have a philanthropic entity called the Arlington Tomorrow Foundation. We fund our Tomorrow Foundation with gas royalties that we get from the city with the Barnett Shale and all the gas wells that are going around in our area. We maintain substantial monies in that, and we invest those monies, well over $100 million that's in the corpus. We invest those monies into the stocks, into real estate, into other things. So what we've started to do is invest some of those monies into buying some of the projects that are around to help take the cost away from those developers. Going into a project that has a huge transient population that impacts the schools and everything else. This is why housing is so important. You get a multifamily unit that has tremendous transient population in there, and it filters down to the kids going to the schools because you can't educate the children if they're bouncing from school to school to school, if they're uncertain about where their next meal is going to come from. We all see it where those affordable housing families are relying upon just more than just the housing, but they're relying upon the schools to help feed their kids. Sometimes the only meals that the kids get during the day is with our school districts. So it's a never-ending problem. The key in my mind is we keep chipping away and making sure that local government works. We got to be creative on how we get the monies to help fund these projects. And every community is going to be a little bit different. Some communities have tremendous land available to them. We happen not to have much land available to us, so we have to really look at monetizing those properties in a good way.
Yeah, just wanted to add a couple of other sort of specific strategies we're using. Like in the macro strategy, so much of what I've talked about and what we think about is new production and how are we improving the production pipeline. But we also need to really focus on preservation. And so a huge chunk of our energy, about $2 million, it's a mix of local and federal funds, is really directed towards preservation, weatherization strategies. How are we, coming alongside owner-occupied homes and giving them access to monies to be able to stay in their homes. And then, in our market, as we've just, we've seen so much demand, the real estate tax assessments have just gone up and up, 7, 8, 10% a year, which is making it really difficult for long-term homeowners. In Virginia, we're a Dillon rule state, not a home rule state, so we don't have the local authority to be able to cap property tax assessments, but we have put policies in place to be able to offer rebates for folks under a certain income threshold, where if they pay their assessment and they meet income qualifications, we actually give them a rebate back to them. So I think increasingly we're doing some of the legislative work at the state level, but increasingly we will find ways to protect long-term owners who are low income to be able to stave off what the market is doing.
I love this. We're really getting down to some solutions. Mayor Ross, I love hearing about the way you're creatively helping to finance pre-development through the use of philanthropic capital, investing that so that you can create an evergreen fund. It brings to mind the new housing fund that we were speaking of earlier in Richmond. Would you like to give us some? Because again, you're harnessing some of the economic development benefits from major employers in your area with oil. You're doing that with the data centers and now turning that into an asset for housing. Could you tell us a little bit more about the fund?
Yeah, and as Senator Warner noted, so we're also, Virginia's, one of our weird things is that we're independent cities and counties. And so even though Richmond exists as the capital city and in a metro area of about 1.5 million, we're a city of about 235,000 surrounded by counties that are somewhere between 200 and 400,000 residents. Henrico, which sort of loops around Richmond to the east, west, and north, has landed many data centers, and as part of their strategy and ultimately our regional affordable housing strategy, they've committed a large amount of $65 million to their affordable housing trust fund. We similarly in the city, not with data center money, but we have put $50 million into our affordable housing, $10 million a year over the course of 5 years, and now we're in the middle of year 2 of that strategy.
That's wonderful. Want to make sure that I make a plug for your questions. Pretty soon we're going to open it up. I have already heard people, Lisa in the audience was acknowledging that Mayor Ross was speaking a word. If you all have questions or some comments for the mayors, please do use your QR code to indicate that, and we'll try to pick those into the conversation as well. But want to continue drilling down on some of the questions that we have here around things at the local community, because I think we're really getting there in terms of solutions. I have been challenged just even over the past week in hearing about new kind of initiatives that are coming to bear, both on supply, but even a stat that even challenged the idea that we have a supply problem anymore. A group that I know is here today called Pad Split, which is trying to help people rent rooms as another. So I think we're getting to the point where we're like so needing to drive major innovation in this space that people are they're really thinking out of the box. And it sounds like you both are in your jurisdictions also thinking outside the box. One of the things we heard from the survey of mayors, which will be released tomorrow, so I'm just giving you all a little sneak peek into it, but we will release it tomorrow at the U.S. Conference of Mayors conference. But one of the things that was clear there is that mayors like yourselves are relying on public-private partnerships in order to get some of that creative solutioning over the hump, to really push toward new ideas. Looking across Richmond and Arlington, what are the ways in which you are partnering with developers, nonprofits, or financial institutions to get some of the big impact?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think one of the things that I've clearly heard from our development community, both on the for-profit and nonprofit side, is that it's a bear to get through the gauntlet of city government. And so we are really focused on how do we reduce the bureaucracy. I recognize that somebody applies for a permit that has to touch 4 or 5 different departments: planning, DPW, DPU, and that stuff gets lost in City Hall. And so we have been really focused in this first 6 months on process mapping, what those different processes look like, adopting new technology that will make the flow of that easier to track and identify. And then we're about to open a one-stop center on the first floor of our City Hall where all of those departments have representation and are co-located. Because we recognize that for developers, like, the time lost in that is money, and ultimately it is not helping us get to our goal of more production. And so we're really focused on redesigning our processes, making it easier for people to get through the bureaucracy of city government.
That is really great. And I think there are some ways in which there are data and tech solutions that could help to simplify some of the systems, bring that visibility across departments as you're co-locating them and using different resources. So definitely happy to be partnering with you on that front.
Yeah, and we're still in procurement process on what that tech platform will look like, and so hopefully, by this time next year, we'll have some actual data on how well it's working.
Awesome. Look forward to that. Mayor Ross?
Well, there are so many. We could spend all day talking about the various options. We got all day. That clock says we do not have all day. But there are a number of things that we are doing to help streamline things. One of the things is my mind just went blank now. Lord.
It happens to the best of us.
It happens to the best.
You're streamlining different
We're
things.
streamlining.
We're
One of the
talking
things was the Arlington Tomorrow Foundation we talked about, and utilizing that. Getting tax credit and working with our Housing Finance Corporation to ensure that we're offering affordable housing in the other areas with the tax credits available on there. But we also work with other local governments in collaboration to keep people from adversely impacting those alternatives for us. We recently in Texas were successful in getting a new bill passed in the legislative session because we had a problem starting in last fall where developers would come in and go to what we called traveling HFCs, the Traveling Housing Finance Corporations. Developers would partner up with a small community out in West Texas, let's say, and that small community would then become a managing partner in developments all over the state of Texas. They would move and purchase a property in Arlington for $80 to $100 million, and then they would immediately pull it off the tax rolls claiming that it was a tax-exempt property. Well, that's taking substantial monies from us. The problem is the residents of that community were not meeting the requirements of tax-exempt properties on that. And they would be trying to play catch up. In the meantime, the new owners of the property weren't paying taxes on that. So Arlington sued a number of these traveling HFCs, obtained restraining orders against them. Fort Worth has joined us in the lawsuit. And then we lobbied our senators and representatives in Texas, and Governor Abbott just signed into bill a law that forbids those traveling HFCs from moving into everybody else's backyard and taking care of those things.
One other thing I'll add is that local governments have to get much more sophisticated about the underwriting process, right? Because in this environment, the capital stacks are getting more and more complex, right? We're pulling in federal 4% LIHTC and 9% LIHTC money, our performance housing grants, or money from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It is getting more and more complicated. And so one of the things that we're really trying to build capacity around is understanding how do you best support that. And one of the criteria that we're using in Richmond to fund through our Affordable Housing Trust Fund is how much are you leveraging this against. And so we're sort of baking that into the process so that projects that come to us being able to leverage more outside dollars will get more of a public infusion of dollars.
I love that, even as a strategy and a takeaway for people in this room, and thinking about how we could bring capacity building efforts to city governments to help understand some of the complex underwriting, the way it looks today, and where some of the solutions can be shared to help each side. I think that's a really good thing that we can carry forward from this conversation that many of us in the room can participate in supporting. We're now opening up for audience questions. I'll take them as they're coming in, but feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. They are being filtered. We are not going to ask Mayor Ross some things about his past, but really welcome your questions and thoughts on how we may proceed. This is an interesting question. Since you brought up sports, Mayor Ross, people want to hear more about the influence of professional sports on the city's development.
Yeah, well, Arlington is home of the largest entertainment district in the Southwest United States. So it's really not just sports. We have 3 large stadiums, Choctaw Stadium, Globe Life Field, and AT&T stadiums within walking distance of each other. In the middle of all of that, we have Texas Live, which is an entertainment sporting event with stages and multiple restaurants and everything. And then we have a accumulation of large hotels in the entertainment district as well. We bring about 17 to 18 million people a year to Arlington for entertainment. So if there is a Taylor Swift concert, a monster truck competition, a tractor pull, PBR rodeo, the Cowboys, the Rangers, all of that happens in Arlington. From a housing perspective, it created unique challenges because some people don't want to be in the middle of the entertainment. So one of the things we've done is we zoned for short-term rentals within that housing district in there that allowed people who owned multifamily or owned houses or condos or duplexes or whatever it was, if they're within a certain radius of our entertainment district, we allow the short-term rentals on there. Now, we don't allow them throughout the rest of the city. We have a very specific border on there because sometimes the STRs are the bad language for other parts of the community. But we've already been challenged on it. We've won the challenge, and it's worked out well because it forces all of the STRs to get registered, to operate in a reasonable manner, and then we get the hot tax, the hotel occupancy tax, coming back to us as a result of the STRs on there. With 1 cent of the sales tax that we get from that entertainment district, we've also funded our EDC. So our EDC, we were hoping it would bring maybe $25 million a year. It has done probably twice that in bringing in the sales tax and helping to fund everything to attract other business on there. When you attract the other business, then you're attracting the good developers for the housing, both at an executive level and at affordable level. So it all sort of is interwoven with each other on that, and go Cowboys.
All right, so we'll take that as a model that sports development and housing can coexist and work for a city. For both mayors, how can we build bipartisan support for policies that address the needs of people who are unhoused, we got to tip over to read this, as a result of all the supply issues you are raising?
I think the approach to building bipartisan support is in part, what are we trying to do? If we're trying to lower the number of unhoused people in a community, how do we make the kind of moral, ethical, and financial arguments for those things? And so I would suggest that, one way is that we do more financial analysis on what is it costing local, state, and federal pockets to support the unhoused through other pathways. We've seen some great examples of communities that have used large amounts of ARPA dollars to really pour into permanent supportive housing solutions to solve that in their own communities. And so we're really thinking about how do we find more committed funds to do that. But I think, you know, the issues we're talking about the right to housing, the importance of housing. I'm a public health physician by background, and part of what brought me to ultimately run for office was this understanding that health and well-being of communities is so tied to access to safe and stable housing, to education, to income, to jobs, to all of the social determinants of health. And so I think there's a pretty easy argument, but it's going to come down to the details of how does the money work and whose pocket is it coming from. And so we've got to get savvier about the economic analysis.
I love this question. The question could also be paraphrased by, how do you get government officials to do what the hell they're supposed to do and stop fighting with each other? Because that's really what it comes down to. I don't know about y'all. I am so sick and tired of partisan bickering. I can't stand it. The potholes, the potholes in my city do not give a damn if you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican. They want to be filled. The crime wants to be lowered. Housing needs to become affordable. We can do all of that shit if you stop your fighting and start focusing on what the damn problem is. And nowadays, at almost every level, except for us mayors, because we're pretty damn perfect. At almost every level, people are fighting too much. We do it better when we do it together, period. And if we start focusing our efforts together, we're going to come up with so many creative ideas. Just think for a second. Here's a novel idea. If you take all the energy and pointing the fingers at the other side and put that energy into solving our housing issues, how much we can get done. It is absolutely pathetic that all of us are doing that type of stuff. We need to change the narrative, period.
Love it. We got to get real in order to get to real solutions. I really appreciate that. This is our last question for this time together. Hopefully, this brought you the solutions and energy you needed to start this morning. I know it has for me, but just wanted to give you both an opportunity to just close out with what you want this audience, this group of housing experts and leaders, both representing all bipartisan sides of all of this, to really take away from what you know on the ground to be the ways of moving ahead.
Yeah. This work, especially in the housing and sort of community development space, is deeply personal, because even though I've spent my career as a physician, a pediatrician, a public health doc, I have lived for 21 years in an incredibly racially and socioeconomically diverse community. And it has become less and less so over the last 10 years, right? The market, the economic pressures, I've literally watched my lower income, mostly black neighbors get pushed out of the neighborhood as more investment has come in. And, as our society becomes more and more racially and socioeconomically diverse, I think it's on us to create the opportunities for those communities to not only to stay where they are, but for that growing diversity to exist. And that takes intentionality, it takes policy, it takes financial investment, but it also takes some heart change. And so one of the things we're kicking the tire on in Richmond is, everywhere that I talk, I'm talking about the importance of being an inclusive community, of embracing growth and change. But there's also some PR and marketing strategies that we probably need to lean in on, because I think everybody gets the deconcentration of poverty as a good, but there's also a deconcentration of wealth that needs to happen in our community. And we need to find ways that communities can live among each other, build community together, and really sort of be in a different mold as we move forward as a society.
That's a beautiful vision. Mayor Ross, you want to close us out?
I'll close this out. This spring, Arlington opened the National Medal of Honor Museum in Texas. We have 61 living recipients of the Medal of Honor. I've had an opportunity to meet all of the living recipients and to sit down and drink bourbon and smoke cigars and have a good time with these gentlemen. And I've asked them, why did you do those incredible acts of courage that got you the Medal of Honor? And the response is always the same. It's because of love. The love of the men and women they served with, the love of their community, the love of God, the love of their family, the love of their country. Dr. Martin Luther King taught us back in the 60s that the only thing strong enough to overcome hate is love. Y'all do what you do because you love it. So I would argue that this is really a call to action. We can facilitate change when we unify that love and we transform our communities. Love isn't just a word. You can transform lives. You can transform communities. You can transform states. You can transform a country when we come together, we act in love, and we get things done. So thank y'all for putting up with my craziness. And I love y'all.